Hello students, welcome to FS Cloud. My name is Shashmita. We have an app by the name Careers Cloud which you can go and download through the Play Store. Once you have downloaded the application, you will easily be able to log in using your Gmail ID. And once you have logged in, you will be redirected to this page where you will be getting this URL. And there will be option for home, all courses, my courses and doubt section in this application. You will be getting multiple PDFs, multiple content on daily basis that will be enhancing your learning. Under Crack Current Affairs, you will be able to see multiple options. First one is Current Affairs English. We upload the day-to-day basis news in the English format. And apart from English PDF, we also provide them in Hindi format. And this banking awareness, we upload a PDF every month. So this PDF will contain the banking news, banking and the finance news of that respective month. And Current Affairs exam PDF will have two categories. One is that most important news of that particular month will be uploaded in this Current Affairs exam PDF. And also exam perspective PDF will also be uploaded. And next is Special CA. This will contain Union Budget, Economic Survey, and also the most important events that had taken place globally as well as nationally. And next most important is topic wise. So the entire news of that particular month will be segregated into different topics. And in order to recollect whatever you've read, we also provide you with topic wise quizzes. Apart from that, we also provide state current affairs. Now, here if you see, we provide you with the day-to-day PDF, and this we provide you with the weekly PDF. So that particular week news will be compiled into a PDF and in question and answer format in English and will be uploaded here. And to enhance your learning, you can also, to enhance and strengthen your learning, you can also attend the quiz. Here we provide you with the entire news of that particular week. But here we take the top 60 most important news and we upload it in this PDF in question and answer format. Apart from weekly, we also provide you the monthly ones. This PDF will contain detailed view of that particular month news, and this will have a brief format of the same news. This will be in the form of a question and answer format, and this will have the top 100 question and answer of that particular month. We also provide you with the PIB news on a day-to-day basis, which you can go and read in these particular tabs. Apart from that, we also provide the Union Budget and Economic Survey. You can also attend you can read after reading the PDF. You can also go and attend the quiz. This is available in the Special CA category. We also provide state level current affairs. So this will be very helpful for students who are preparing for state level exams. For example, if you are preparing for Tamil Nadu state level exams, then you can click this tab and you will be able to see all the current affairs or news related to Tamil Nadu. Apart from that, we also provide PDF from the exam perspective. Suppose you are preparing for RBI Assistant Mains, then this tab will contain 5 to 6 months of current affairs, which has high probability of being asked in RBI Assistant Mains. Similarly, for SBI PO, RRB PO, Clerk Mains, all these are being given under this section. And also we provide separate content-wise, topic-wise current affairs like national affairs, government schemes, international affairs, banking and finance, economy and businesses, MOUs and committees and meetings. All these different types of news are segregated in these particular categories. Hello students, welcome to our new initiative. In this initiative, we will be uploading the weekly current affairs on banking and finance section. So this will be uploaded on every Monday. And so on the whole, per month, you will have totally 4 videos related to this topic. And apart from just providing you with the banking and finance news, we also provide you the conceptual explanation so that this will enhance and also strengthen your knowledge about these topics. Today, we will be covering the May 2nd week banking and finance awareness news. Now, moving to the first news, RBI revises the bank's capital market exposure norms for T+1 settlement. Now, why has this been in news? Previously, the market settlement by the SEBI was T+2. Now, it has moved to T+1 settlement. Suppose you issue an order to buy or sell on T, that is trading day, then the settlement, that is the buyer will get his shares and the seller will get his money after 2 days. But now it has been reduced to 1 day. So he will get it after 1 day. That is T+1 day. Now, what is this all about? There is a mutual fund house. Mutual fund house pools in the money from various investors and buys stocks in the stock market. Now, each mutual fund house will have a custodian bank. What does this custodian bank do? The custodian bank, it stores the stocks that the mutual fund house buys. So, this custodian bank will store the shares on behalf of the mutual fund house. And mutual fund house will have a fund manager. The fund manager will tell what to buy, how much to buy, and also at what price to buy. All these decisions are taken by the fund manager, but the stocks that have been bought from the stock market, they are stored in the custodian bank. In order to reduce risk or fraud happening activities, this division is there. Now, This custodian market, we know that trade happens on a T+1 basis nowadays. So if the mutual fund wants to buy stocks from the stock market, so it buys in bulk, not just 1 or 2 shares, it buys in crores or lakhs only. So it will tell the custodian bank, I am planning to buy this share, some 1 lakh shares of say SBI from stock market. But the settlement will take only after 1 day. So I don't wish to pay right now. I wish to pay after or on a delivery basis. So when I get the shares, I will pay the money. So I want to pay then. So now I have to place the order. For that, you kindly provide me an IPC, that is irrevocable payment commitment. So custodian bank issues an IPC in favor of the stock market. As instructed by the mutual fund house. So what it tells that as per the irrevocable payment commitment, it tells that if the mutual fund fails to pay the money and buy the shares, I will buy the shares from the stock market. This is what this IPC is for. So I hope you understand. Irrevocable payment commitment, it provides a commitment on behalf of the mutual fund house, that is its customer, to the stock market that in the delivery basis, when the shares are delivered, I will pay. If my borrower fails to pay, I will pay the money. This is what this custodian bank says. So this happens only after 1 day. So today is the trade day where the order is issued. So tomorrow is that waiting period, that is 1 day, and then the next day only this shares and the money both are exchanged. So this 1 day, if you say the Monday, the order is given. Tuesday is that 1 day it takes, and Wednesday the money is also delivered and the shares are also delivered in exchange. Now in this 1 day, this IPC is facing market exposure. Now this IPC, if you see, it is a financial guarantee. It is a non-fund credit, just like any bank guarantee or LOC. So there is no money involved in the first place. Only when the borrower fails to pay, only then the money is involved. So these are non-fund credits. So this 1 day, this is the order placing day, Monday, and Wednesday is the day where the shares are exchanged. So T day, that is Tuesday, 1 day, this IPC, this custodian bank is exposed to the market exposure. See, suppose the share that when he gave order for 1 lakh share SBI. Suppose one share was trading at 100 rupees. And this day it has got reduced to 80 rupees. But on Wednesday it will be delivered only for 100 rupees, because when you place the order, you placed it for 100, but after the order was placed, it got reduced to 80. So in this case, suppose he has placed some 1 lakh share, so it will be 1 crore. So what happens is that, suppose this mutual fund house, it fails to pay the money. In that case, the custodian bank has to pay 1 crore from his pocket and buy this 1 lakh shares from the stock market. But this 1 lakh shares are not worth 1 crore, but it is worth only 80 lakhs, because from 100 rupees, it has gone down to 80 rupees on the very next day when the order was placed. So this is the market exposure risk that is associated with this custodian bank. So you have to keep aside certain capital because of this market exposure. So this is what has been stated by the newly revised guidelines by the RBI. So previously, if you see, since Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, previously it was for 2 days. The settlement took 2 days. So the market exposure was for 1 and 2 days. But now, since that T+1 settlement is taking place, so the market exposure is just for 1 day. So this market exposure has been changed in this new guideline, and this is what this news is about. I hope you are all clear about this news. So let's move to the news. So previously, if you see, T+2 rolling settlement was there, but now since it has been moved to T+1 settlement as per SEBI, so this circular has been changed accordingly. Now, if a custodian bank wants to issue an IPC, that is irrevocable payment commitment in favor of its client, then it has to have one particular word in its clause, that is inalienable rights over the securities. So what is this inalienable rights? It means there's something that is not transferable or that is impossible to take away. So which means that the custodian bank has complete rights over this securities. This clause should be there in the agreement if the custodian bank wants to issue the IPC. Now, this clause is not required in two cases. What are the two cases? One, if there is balance in the customer's house account. Suppose 1 crore rupees of settlement is going to take place, and if the customer has 1 crore in its account, then this clause is not required. And in case of forex deals, even the foreign institutions are involved in this. So in case of forex deals, the bank's nostro account must have the amount credited. If these two are fulfilled, then you don't have to include this inalienable right in the clause in the agreement. Now, so what is the maximum intraday risk to the custodian banks? It is at 30%. So it will be reckoned as capital market exposure will be at 30% of the settlement amount. So if it is 1 crore, then the maximum capital market exposure will be 30 lakhs. Now, how is this 30 lakhs calculated? How is this 30% calculated? This is based on the assumption that 20% downward price movement of the equities on T+1 day. So we saw that one price of the SBI share was 100 rupees on the T day, when on the trading day, and the next day it came down to 80. So which means 20% price down is possible. And apart from that, an additional margin, for extra safety purpose, an additional margin of 10% is also added for further downward movement of price. So totally this 30%. So this is the market exposure. So this is the capital market exposure that the custodian bank may face. For this, the capital has to be set aside. Now, in case the margin is paid in cash, the exposure will stand reduced by the amount of margin paid. See, here you saw that 1 crore was the settlement amount and the exposure is 30 lakhs. Suppose the mutual fund house has paid some margin. 1 crore, the mutual fund house has paid some 10 lakhs in cash. Then you can reduce this 10 lakhs from the market exposure. Now the market exposure will only be 20 lakhs since the margin is being paid in cash. So in case the margin is paid in cash, the exposure will stand reduced by the amount of margin paid. But if the margin is paid in another form, see, mutual fund house, they will have a lot of stocks or mutual fund units. So they can also pay it in the form of units or also in the form of stocks. So these stocks are subject to market conditions. So they can go up, they can go down. They are not constant like cash. So there will be a haircut on them. Suppose you have given a mutual fund units which are worth around 10 lakhs. Then there might be a haircut unit of 1 or 2 lakhs. It varies. So then it will be calculated only for 8 lakhs. So the haircut may be for 1 or 2 lakhs and only 8 lakhs will be considered as margin. So the market exposure was 30 lakhs minus 8 lakhs. Now the market exposure will only be 22 lakhs. So in case of mutual fund units or stocks, a haircut is involved. But if you have given cash as the margin, and then it is directly deducted from the capital market exposure. So mutual fund is paid by way of permitted securities to mutual funds or FPI investors. The exposure will stand reduced by the amount of margin after adjusting for the haircut. Now, under the T+1 settlement cycle, the exposure norm shall normally be for intraday. So if you see T+1, so only in this one day this exposure is there. Next day the settlement takes place. The mutual fund pays the amount and the stocks are transferred to the mutual fund house. So only in this one day this capital exposure takes place. But in case the mutual fund fails to repay, then the custodian bank has to pay the money and the shares will be transferred in favor of the custodian bank. Then this is exposed, then the custodian bank will be exposed to the market risk forever because the shares are transferred to custodian bank in its name. So this will be exposed to market exposure forever. So in case any exposure remains outstanding at the end of T+1. So in this case, even after T+1, this exposure still remains. So in that case, capital will have to be maintained on the outstanding capital exposure. So a certain capital has to be maintained on the outstanding capital market exposure. Now, the underlying exposure of the banks to counterparties from intraday. So how much, like if they issue a IPC, what is the maximum amount they can issue? So the exposure of banks to counterparties from intraday CME subject to limits under the large exposure framework. So they can't give n number of LPC as they wish to. There has to be a limit on that. So what is it that under the large exposure framework, the sum of all exposure values of a bank to a counterparty or a group of connected counterparty is defined as large exposure, and it should be equal to or above. So large exposure framework is that if the exposure to a party or to a group of connected party is equal to or more than 10% of the bank's eligible capital base. This eligible capital base is tier 1. You know that the capital consists of two parts, tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 1 is the most liquidatable. So you can liquidate immediately, but tier 2 takes time. So these are the two types of capital base. In that, the exposure limit, if it is equal to 10%, equal to or above 10% of tier 1, then this is considered as the large exposure framework. Next news is about a report that's been released by ADB. ADB, that is Asian Development Bank. It has recently released Aging Well in Asia, Asian Development Policy Report. This covers the health insurance. So how many people have the health insurance in a country in Asia and all. These details are covered in this report. So in this report, it has stated that India has the lowest health insurance coverage among the older people. Say suppose there are 100 old people, then among that only 21 people have health insurance. And the next is South Korea and Thailand. They have universal health coverage. That is, almost all people in these two countries, they have insurance coverage. Now, this report examines the progress in Asia and the Pacific in 4 dimensions. So what are the 4 dimensions? One is health, others productive work, economic security, and social engagement. So the data set on the older people in 9 economies in developing Asia is provided below. So let us see them one by one. So 57% of the older people, they have at least one diagnosed non-communicable diseases. In that 57, only 40% received regular health checks. And then around 43% with functional limitation, that is, they are not able to walk properly. They need some guidance continuously. So those kind of people with functional limitation, they lack long-term care. So the percentage is 43%. And up to 94%, if you see, the people who are aged above 65 plus, they work in informal sector. And the 46% of the older pension, the coverage of the social pension is higher than the contributory pensions. The contributory pensions are one like NPS, IEPF. So these are a contributory pension. And social pension, if you see, National Social Assistance Program. So these are social pension which are provided by the government. So the coverage in social pension is more than the contributory pension. Now, India, China and South Korea, in that around 80 to 90% of the retirement finance come from the private income and not the public pension or the social assistance. So other things in the report are the aging population in Asia and Pacific, they will nearly double by 2050. That is, it will become 1.2 billion or 25% of the regional population, which was previously only 13.5%. So the aging population will become 25% of the regional population from 13.5%. And a new financial preparedness index was prepared. So in that, the share of financially prepared near old people. So the people who are going to become old. So in that, how many are financially prepared? If you see that, it has a good number in Japan and India. If you see, it is 86% in Japan, 73% in India. Whereas in South Korea and China, it is little lesser. In China, if you see, it is 64% and in South Korea, it is 58%. So the report also states that from 2022 to 2050, the life expectancy age is expected to increase. This is because the medical investment and also the new technology is evolving. So if any new disease comes also, we have the technology to combat it or to reduce it. So the life expectancy is obviously going to increase. So the life expectancy, which is at age 60, is forecasted to increase by 3.7 years for women and 4.1 years for men. Now, 40% of the people over 60 in Asia Pacific, they lack pension access, and especially in case of women, it is highly disproportionate because they do unpaid domestic work. So, the average labor force participation rate for age above 65, it is 32%. So, even above age 65, people are working, and the average labor force participation rate is 32% for men and 15% for women. India is contributing to health insurance. for older citizens and also for the normal citizens. If you have heard the Ayushman Bharat, which provides a 5 lakh insurance coverage. So this is one of the best schemes, best insurance scheme of the government. And also IRDA is also working towards universal health insurance coverage in India. So this it has removed the age limit 65 to buy health insurance. So previously, if you see, if you are aged above 65, that is if you are 67 or 68, you cannot buy a health insurance. That is the age limit. But now they have removed the age limit in order to become an inclusive healthcare system. And if you see, Bangladesh, Indonesia and India, over half of those lacking healthcare access are in the bottom of the 2 wealth quintiles. Now, what is this quintiles? This is nothing but the 20% of the population. So, suppose the population is 1 crore, then 20% of it, that is 20 lakhs. So, here it means 2 wealth quintiles, which means 40%. So, 40% in the bottom wealth quintiles, they do not have healthcare access in Bangladesh, Indonesia and India. The president of ADB is Masaktsugu Asakawa. It is headquartered in Manila. It was established in 1965 and there are 68 members in total, 49 within Asia and Pacific and the 19 are outside Asia and Pacific. We have launched a new course called Static Banking Awareness course. Now this course will be helpful for students who are preparing for the banking exams and for the regulatory body exams. And also recently you would have seen Paytm Bank in news frequently. So when an aspirant reads this news, he would have ample number of questions like what is a payment bank, what are the norms for it, and which is the committee that has launched it. So this Static Banking Awareness course lays a foundation to the current banking and finance news. Now, you have to download our Careers Cloud to access this course. Once you have logged into our app, you can go and click this All Courses icon and then you'll be redirected to this page. In this, you have to go and click the Static Banking Awareness course, and under the Details tab, you will be able to see a brief about this course. And under the Part tab, it will contain all the contents, all the topics of the contents that are currently available in this course. We are working on this continuously and this will be completed within 2 months. Under the Free tab, you can go and access one content, that is the origin and development content, for free. You can go and read this content and have an idea about this course. After reading this content, do attend the quiz that is also available under the same tab. Now, our team has allocated ample amount of time and resources to curate this content. We have created this content from various books and from various verified websites. Our content is better than any book that is available in the market. This is because we update this content on a dynamic basis. For example, there are currently 39 DRTs that are available in the country now. In future, if one more DRT is created or added, then it would become 40. So we would update this content on a dynamic basis. But in case of books, you have to wait for the next publication for this updated content. Nowadays, a lot of practical questions have been asked in the banking exams. For example, how many public sector banks are available on the stock exchange? Which is the payment bank that is being listed on the stock exchange? So, we try to cover as many practical questions as possible in this course. Apart from this, we also provide you a question bank that will contain around 3000 questions and the previous year questions along with it. We also have a dedicated tab that will release the important RBI notification and the frequent news released by the RBI. You can use this code B15 to avail 15% discount. This is one of the highest discounts that we have offered until now. So do avail this code B15 while you purchase the course. So next news is about SEBI amendment for the mutual fund regulation in order to curb the fraudulent practices. Now, so SEBI had mandated the Asset Management Committee to execute institutional mechanism to curb fraudulent activities like front running and insider trading. Now, what is this front running? See, many people might have access to information even before it's released in the media. Say suppose you are working in a company XYZ. This company is planning to issue bonus shares. So people working in the company may have access to information. So they may already have the information. So before, like tomorrow only, they are planning to release this news in the public. But today itself the employee will have this news. So what he'll do is he will use this information and buy a lot of shares and gain the profit or gain the next day. If you see when the bonus news is released, then the share price will increase. That time what the employee will do, he will sell the shares. So he gains from this insider news. So before, if an employee has access to the news even before it's released in the public, and if he uses this information to get profit, then that is called as front running. So front running is the illegal practice of using non-public information to trade securities, options, futures or other assets before the information becomes public. Brokers have access to information, not just employees. If you see brokers, they might have in the evening after the market hours, the company manager might call and tell him like, see, I want to buy 1 crore shares from the so-and-so company. So he will have the information. So next day morning, before executing that order, he might execute his personal order. Because if you're going to buy 1 crore shares, then the price might increase, right? So he will execute his order. So this, he will also have some profit from this kind of orders. So brokers also have access to information related to the orders of the investors in advance. So using this, if you gain profit, then this is an illegal practice called front running. So how has this been reduced? This has been reduced by use of technology and data analysis to detect trading activity which has quite doubtful patterns. So they have data analysis which continuously monitors, because crores and crores of trading is happening and you can't manually go and monitor. So this data analysis and technology both together, they monitor the pattern. If there is any suspicious pattern, then they report it. Also, strict internal policies to prevent misconduct by the employees or dealers or associated entities. And also clear guidelines for reporting. Suppose something is happening, if the employee comes to know, then he has to go and report it. So there has to be clear guidelines for reporting also, and inquiring into suspected misconduct. So Asset Management Committee required by SEBI to execute a system through which the employees can anonymously, because no one will prefer to tell their name, right? If they want to report anything against a particular person who is in the higher position, so they don't want to take a risk. So there should be an anonymous reporting in the as per the SEBI. So employees can anonymously report misconduct within the company. So SEBI, another news is that SEBI has raised the investment limit for index funds and exchange traded funds in companies belonging to the sponsor group from 25% to 35%. Now, what are these index funds? They are just, but they mimic the index, so that, see, suppose there is Nifty 50. So there will be an index fund which will mimic the Nifty 50. It will have the same stocks in the same composition as Nifty 50, and it will, if there is any change in the Nifty 50 stocks, it will also change. So it will just mimic, or it is just a mirror image of the Nifty 50. So this is a passive fund, because you don't continuously buy or sell stocks. You just monitor the Nifty 50, and according to that you change your index fund. So this is an index fund, and now SEBI, it has raised. Previously, you can buy invest in the companies of the sponsor group only 25% of the total assets. Suppose the total index fund is 100 crore. In that, only 25% you can invest in the companies of the sponsor group. So, but now it has been raised to 35%. So an index mutual fund invests in stocks that imitate a stock market like index, like NSE, Nifty, BSE, Sensex, etc. They are passively managed funds, which means that the fund manager invests in the same securities as present in the underlying index in the same proportion and does not change the portfolio composition. This is an index mutual fund. The next news is RBI allows standalone primary dealers to borrow in foreign currency. Now, what are these primary dealers? Say, suppose there is a person A, he wants to sell his government securities, say at around 90 rupees. And there is a person B, he wants to buy the government securities at, say, around 89 rupees. Now, this primary dealer comes into place. What he does is that he acts as a seller to, he acts as a buyer for this A and as a seller to this B. He will tell A that I will buy your security at 89.5. And he will tell B that I will sell the security for 89.75. So this 0.25 is what he earns, the primary dealer earns. So this is the job of the primary dealer. It mainly acts as a market maker. So by this way, suppose he A only wants it to sell at 90 rupees and B only wants to buy at 89 rupees, then there will not be any buy sell option. So primary dealer comes in between them and helps in fulfilling the transaction. So this is the main role of primary dealers. They also buy a lot of government securities in the initial auction and they sell it in the secondary market. This is also one of the primary dealers' job. Now, what has RBI stated? So the system of primary dealers in the government securities was introduced by RBI in 1995 to strengthen the market infrastructure of the government securities and to put in place an improved efficient secondary market trading system. Now, it has stated that standalone primary dealers, they can borrow in foreign currency from their parent companies or authorized entities. This standalone primary dealers, they also offer exchange traded currency derivative. Now, what is this currency derivative? Say, there is an exporter. He is exporting some goods. So, he will earn in dollars in return. And there is an importer. He needs dollars so that he can pay his foreign company and import the goods. So, export, he wants the dollars to raise. Import, he wants the dollars to go low. So, suppose now, $1 is trading at 80 rupees. In future, if it goes to 100 rupees, then the importer will be worried. Importer will be sad because if he wants to buy a good which is worth of $1 from the foreign company, previously he used to pay $1 which was 80 rupees. So he'll go to the exchange, he'll give 80 rupees, he will get $1 and he pay to the foreign company. But now he has to pay 100 rupees and then only he will get $1 and pay. So this is worrying the importer. But the exporter is happy because he gets 100 rupees for $1 that he gives the exchange. So what it does that the exporter, the importer, they get into a derivative trade agreement. So exporter thinks that it might go down, dollar might go down, and importer thinks that dollar might go up. So they get into a contract, a mutual contract where they decide that $1 we sell it at maybe 90 rupees. So the exporter will also be happy, importer will also be happy. So this derivative contract will be that certain amount of currency, maybe $100, in future after 1 month from today, I will sell it at 90 rupees per dollar, and importer will tell that I will buy it at 90 rupees per dollar. So this is a derivative contract. This is done to reduce the risk of the fluctuations. So the standalone primary dealers can borrow from in foreign currency from their parent companies or the authorized entities. Now, these standalone primary dealers can also avail excess overdraft facilities in Nostro account. Now, what is this Nostro account? Suppose this standard primary dealer has an account in some European bank. This is some European bank. It has an account and this account is in the form of euro dollars. Then this is called a Nostro account. So when a standard primary dealer has an account in Europe or any other country in that currency amount, then that account is called as Nostro account. So what it has allowed, that RBI has allowed it to, you can avail overdraft facilities against this Nostro account. Just like in Jan Dhan account we have in India, you can avail the overdraft facility. Similarly, here also against the Nostro account, you can avail this overdraft facility. But this has to be settled within 5 days. Suppose the overdraft you have availed around maybe 10,000 euros or something. Then within 5 days, the 10,000 euros, you have to bring it back and you have to settle it. If not, after this month, suppose this month is what, May month. So you have availed and now you have not settled the overdraft within 5 days. Then by June 15th, so by June 15th, that is when the next month arises, within 15 days of next month, you have to report it to the RBI. If this exceeds the 5 days of settlement of overdraft, then the primary dealer, the standalone primary dealer has to report it to the RBI. And one main important thing is that this overdraft facility should only be used for operational purposes. Moving to the next news. So, moving to the next part is that excess withdrawals, if not adjusted within 5 days, must be reported to RBI within 15 days from the end of the month in which the limits are exceeded. So, As per the guidelines, the standalone primary dealers are classified as authorized primary dealer category 3 under the section 10 of the FEMA Act. And as per the RBI revised guidelines, such borrowing shall be within the limit of the foreign currency. So, how much ever this SPD is borrowing from its foreign currency from the parent company, it has to be within the limit that is prescribed by RBI. And also the board of the representatives, authorized dealers or banks are now allowed to set the net overnight open position for the calculation of capital charge on foreign assets. Now what is this overnight position? It represents the exposure of an institution to foreign exchange rate fluctuation. See, now I have bought $1 for 80 rupees that SPD has bought. And in future maybe it has kept open. You have the transaction is complete when you have also sold the dollar that you have bought. Now you have bought this $1 for 80. In the future, that is next day, this dollar might face some fluctuation. So this is called as overnight open position. When you have not closed a position, when you have not squared a position, then it is called as net overnight open position. That is, I have bought the dollar, but I have not yet sold it to someone else. Then that is called as an open position, because tomorrow the dollar might reduce or increase. The fluctuations can happen. So which is a risk to the SPD. So it represents the exposure of an institution to the foreign exchange rate fluctuation. And there is a limit. It's like if you have bought $1,000, then there is a limit that how much you can hold overnight. Otherwise, if you're going to hold everything overnight, then tomorrow that might be a huge risk for you. So there is a limit prescribed for that, and that is such limits should not exceed 25% of the dealer's total capital. That is Tier 1 and Tier 2 together, it should not increase 25%. This is the limit prescribed by the RBI. So as of 31st March 2023, there are 7 standalone primary dealers which are registered with RBI as NBFC, and as per RBI data, funds raised by the SPD has raised by 44.4% by year-on-year basis, and major source of fund was from borrowing. That is 90% of their fund was from borrowing. Next news. RBI proposes stricter norms for loans to projects such as roads and ports. So RBI has increased the provisioning for the infrastructure projects. Now, lenders will be required to set aside 5% of the money they lend as general provision. Suppose a bank A has lent around 1,000 crores to an infrastructure project. Then this bank has to set 5%, that is 5 crores as its provisioning for the all existing and new loans. Presently, it was only 0.4%. So out of this 1,000 crores, it is enough if they keep only 0.4%, but now they are required to keep 5%, which is a huge increase from the previous year. And banks and the lenders, the lenders as well as the infrastructure creation project companies, they are also very upset and very worried about this, because for banks, this is a huge amount that they have to keep aside. If they have to keep aside, then they might have to increase the interest rate that they offer the infrastructure projects. But since infrastructure projects are happening for a long period of time, it will happen for 10 years or 15 years, increasing the interest rate will affect the infrastructure companies very badly. So they are a little worried with this provisioning. So what is this provisioning? You don't have to keep the 5%, but the RBI tells that you don't have to keep the 5% immediately. It can be done in a stage-wise manner. It says 2% of provisioning by March 31st, 2005, 3.5% by March 31st, 2026, and 5% by March 31st, 2027. Even this is during the moratorium. Suppose it has started operation. Generally, infrastructure projects take some 5 or 10 years, and then only it will start its operation. So until then, the infrastructure company cannot repay the money. So this a long moratorium period will be provided for these infrastructure companies. So once this moratorium is over, that is once the construction phase is over and the infrastructure has started to function or become operational, then the provisioning will be reduced to 2.5%. So it will be reduced to 2.5% when a project becomes operational, and 1% after the project starts generating cash sufficient in order to pay back the lender. So this is the provisioning stated by the RBI. The next we have certain SEBI news. Let us see them one by one. The First one is that SEBI made mandatory registration of PMS distributors with APMI. Now, SEBI has issued a directive that it has mandated any person or entity involved in the distribution of portfolio management services, they have to obtain registration with the Association of Portfolio Managers in India. Now, who are these distributors? So there will be a portfolio management service. The main purpose is that they manage the portfolio of maybe wealthy clients who have lots of money but they don't have time to manage their portfolio or know where to invest. For those kind of people, these portfolio managed services, they provide management services. So they tell that we will manage your portfolio, you give us the money, we will manage your portfolio. So this distributor, it is an intermediary between the portfolio management services and the investors. It aligns the investors with the perfect PMS according to the risk and the objective of the investors. So now it has stated that this portfolio, these distributors, they have to register with the APMI, that is Association of Portfolio Managers in India. This will come into effect from 1st January 2025 and APM will issue the criteria for registration from 1st July 2024. At present, if you see, the distributors are required to get the certification from the National Institute of Securities Market. Now, why has the SEBI recommended this or issued this direction? Now, this will help in improving the overall efficiency and transparency of the PMS sector. This is in line with the practice followed in mutual fund. Just like a distributor is there in the PMS, similarly there is a distributor in the mutual fund sector too. Here, the MF distributor, they have to register themselves with the Association of Mutual Funds in India, that is AMFI, and get the AMFI registration number for providing distribution service. So only if they have this registration number, they can provide the distribution services to the customers. So the chairman of SEBI is Madhabi Puribuch. It is headquartered in Mumbai and it was established in 1992. SEBI introduces a framework for stock exchange to supervise the RAs and IAs. So what are RA and IA? They are research analysts and investment advisors. Now, so a framework has been provided for the administration and supervision of the research analysts and the investment advisors at stock exchange will be recognized as RAASB and IAASB. So what is that? That research analyst administration and supervisory body and investment advisor administration and supervisory body. So stock exchanges, they can be a research analyst administration and also an investment advisor administration. So there are many people who provide this investment advices. So they will give you financial advices. In return, they will charge some fee from you. So these stock exchanges can govern them. They can supervise them. This is the framework that is being provided for the administration and supervision of the research analysts and the investment advisors respectively. So this is provided under Regulation 38A, Securities Contracts Regulation 2024. This has permitted the recognized stock exchange to undertake the activities of administration and supervision of the research analysts and the investment advisors. So this will come with effect from July 25, 2024. Now, who all can become an administrative body or supervisory body? So it has to, the stock exchange, it has to be operational for at least 15 years. The net worth should be 200 crores and it should have a nationwide recognition, nationwide terminals and investor service center in at least 20 cities. And it should also provide a grievance redressal mechanism including online dispute resolution. So if you satisfy all these requirements, then you are eligible to become a supervisory body for the research analysts and for the investment advisors. Next news, SEBI mandates standardized periodic reporting for the investment advisors. Now, so who are these investment advisors? They are financial professionals that make investment recommendations or conduct security analysis in exchange of a fee. So there is a certain mandate that they have to follow. SEBI has mandated that the investment advisors, they have to submit a periodic report on a half-yearly basis, that is ending on September 30th and March 31st of every financial year. So what will be mentioned in these reports? So various details including shareholding pattern, investment advisor administration, investment advisor administration and supervisory body membership number, SEBI registration number, complaints filed against this investment advisors, and then the social media handles. All these details should be mentioned in this report. And the regulation, so why has the SEBI brought this? It has brought this mainly to protect the interest of the investors in the security market and also promote the development of security market. This is one of the main aim or the objective of the SEBI. Now, it should also share details such as social media handles, bank accounts, National Institute of Security Market certification. So we saw, right, they will have a NISM certification that should also be mentioned in this report. And for the half yearly ending on March 31st, 2024, the investment advisor must submit the periodic report within 15 days from the date of the circular issue. So when the circular has been issued, from that within 15 days, the report has to be submitted for the period ending on March 31st, 2024. Now, SES ESG Research received COR, that is Certificate of Registration as ESG rating provider from SEBI. Now, SES ESG Researcher will function as a Category 2 provider of ESG ratings with effective from 25th April 2024. So, previously it was acting as an ESG business. Now, with this, it has improved or transferred it from ESG business to SES ESG Researcher. Now, this SES will, in partnership with the National Stock Exchange, it will supply the ESG rating data to the NSE for the indices. Just like you have credit rating agencies that provide you the credit of the company when a loan is required or when the bond has to be issued in the market, a credit rating will be attached to this bond. Similarly, this ESG rating is environment, social governance. So this will help the investors to take decision that whether the company is worried about the environment, the social, the people or not, or just they are worried about the profit. So this will help the investors to know the intent of the company and also help them in the investment decision. This is the purpose of the ESG rating. The next news is IFCA permits foreign portfolio investors to issue derivative instruments with Indian securities. Now, what is a derivative instrument? It derives its value from the underlying security or object. Suppose if the underlying security is a commodity, then it is called as commodity derivative. If an underlying object is a share or it's a stock, then it is called as derivative instrument with Indian securities or securities. And similarly, you can also have currencies as the underlying security and you can have currency derivative. So these are the various derivatives that are available. So they derive the value from the underlying object. So if this currency fluctuates, and then the value of this derivative also fluctuates. It either goes up or goes down depending upon the underlying object. So this is a derivative instrument. Now, so if you see the initial phase, the IFSC banking units registered in the IFSCA, they are registered with the SEBI as FPI, that is foreign portfolio investors. They were granted the authority to issue derivative instruments with Indian security as the underlying asset within the GIFT IFSC enclave. So, initially, the banking units which are registered as FPI, they were allowed to issue the derivative instruments. Now, in the second phase, IFSCA has taken a monumental decision. It has extended it to the non-banking entities also. So, the non-banking entities which are registered with the SEBI as the foreign portfolio investors, they can now issue derivative instruments with Indian securities as the underlying asset. So, the entity issuing such derivative instruments in the GIFT IFSC shall ensure compliance with the requirement on issuance of ODI, that is offshore derivative instrument as issued by SEBI and IFSCA. Now, so offshore derivative instruments are vehicles of instrument issued used by the overseas investors to get exposure to the Indian equities. So, overseas, abroad, whoever stays in abroad, if they want to invest in Indian equities, then this is called as the offshore derivative instrument. So, main example of that is the P note, that is the participatory notes. So it is a type of ODI and are instruments issued by the FII, that is foreign institutional investors, to the overseas investors. So the overseas investors, they don't have to register themselves with the SEBI. The FII will register themselves. They will invest in the FII, and the FII will in turn invest in this Indian stock markets. So who wants to invest in the Indian stock market without formally registering with SEBI? So all these overseas investors, if they want to invest in the Indian stock market, they do it via FII, and it is called as P notes, that is called as participatory notes. So IFSAA main objective is to develop and regulate the financial products, financial services and financial institutions in IFSC. The eligible entity is required to provide the requisite information to the clearing corporation in GIFT IFSC in the format by the 10th day of every month. Moving to the next news. So NPCI issues guidelines for the merchant acquisition on the BHIM Aadhaar Pay. Now, what is this BHIM Aadhaar Pay? Suppose a bank calls a merchant. It tells that you can onboard to our bank as a merchant. Here, by onboarding as a BHIM Aadhaar Pay merchant, you will receive your payment directly to your account just by providing your Aadhaar and your authentication, that is your biometric authentication. So a bank calls a customer, merchant, to onboard it, and then it tells to download a merchant app, that is the BHIM app, and then it provides the procedure also. It gets installed, and then the merchant registers himself using his biometric. So fingerprint, that is biometric authentication, is done, and then after it is successfully done, here the customer transfers the amount to the merchant. So this is BHIM Aadhaar Pay. Now, how does a merchant does? So how does a customer does it? So a customer buys a product. Now he has to pay it to the merchant. Now what he does is that the merchant provides you the mobile and the biometric. So here the customer has to provide his bank and his account number and the amount. I mean his bank and the Aadhaar number and the amount that he has to pay the merchant. And with this app, a BHIM Aadhaar Pay biometric will be attached. So the customer has to keep his thumb in that biometric, and the authentication will be done, and then after the verification the amount will be transferred to the merchant. So this is how a BHIM Aadhaar Pay works. Now, so the acquiring banks, they are mandated to verify the merchant details, whether directly onboarded or through partners. So there will be people who act as intermediary between the merchants and the banks. So they have to verify the bank should verify the merchant details, whether they have onboarded directly or through the partners. The bank should assign appropriate merchant category code as per the nature of the business. So depending upon the business on the service, there will be a different category code. So appropriate category code should be provided to the merchant. And the acquiring banks are responsible for monitoring the merchant activity, including onboarding, transaction monitoring, and also training of the merchant. So the bank should ensure that there is a board approved policy. So if you want to onboard any merchant, then that particular bank should have a board approved policy for that. And the merchants associated with any acquiring bank on the BHIM Aadhaar Pay can accept payments from the customers of any bank, not just if that merchant has an account only in Bank of Baroda, then it's not necessary that the customer should also have an account in Bank of Baroda to accept the payment via this bank. The customer can have his or her account in any other bank like SBI, ICICI, any other bank. So it can accept payments from customers of any bank via the biometric authentication. Participating banks. So who all can participate in this merchant acquisition? Payment banks, small finance banks, and then cooperative banks, RRB, and also the main commercial banks. So all these banks can participate in this merchant acquisition. The MD and CEO of NPCI is Dilip Asbe. It is headquartered in Mumbai and it was incorporated in 2008. The next news is about an appointment. The Reserve Bank of India has reappointed Atanu Chakrabarti as the part-time chairman and the independent director of the HDFC Bank for 3 years effective from 5th May 2024 to 4th May 2027. So he is reappointed as the part-time chairman and also an extra position, that is independent director of the HDFC Bank. He has served on the board of the World Bank and as the alternative government and on the central board of directors of the RBI. He has also served as the chairman of the National Infrastructure Investment Fund. The MD and the CEO of the HDFC Bank Limited is Sasidhar Jagdishan and it's headquartered in Mumbai and the tagline is "We understand your world." Moving to the next news, India and Ghana agrees to operationalize UPI on GHIPSS. This is the payment settlement of the Ghana in 6 months. So India and Ghana, they have agreed to operationalize the UPI of the NPCI, National Payment Corporation of India, on Ghana interbank payment and settlement systems within a period of 6 months. So we know that India has been tying up with many other countries for this UPI use operation. That is, India has expanded its UPI operation in various other countries like France, UAE, Sri Lanka and Mauritius. So India and Ghana, they have also discussed possibilities of MOU on digital transformation solution, local currency settlement. Now we have this local currency settlement with Russia and many other countries too. But it initially started with Russia. Now the president of Ghana is Nana Akufo-Addo and the capital is Accra and the currency is Ghanaian cedi. So RBI has approved the appointment of the Ujjivan Small Finance Bank MD and CEO. So Reserve Bank of India has approved Sanjeev Nautiyal as the MD and the CEO of the Ujjivan Small Finance Bank for 3 years, which is effective from 1st July 2024. He is currently the independent director of the LIC. So he will be replacing Itra Davis. Now, OECD revised the India's GDP growth. So recently, OECD has released the OECD Economic Outlook Volume 2024 Issue 1. In that, it has raised the GDP forecast of India from 6.2% to 6.6%. So 0.4% it has increased. So the global GDP is 3.1% in 2024 and 3.2% in 2025. And India's inflation is expected to be 4.3% in financial year 25 and 4.2% in financial year 20. Now, Canara HSBC Life Insurance introduces a new plan. So what is it? So the new unit-linked insurance plan, that is ULIP, it offers 3 options, that is Promise for Wealth, Promise for Care and Promise for Life. Similarly, ICICI Prudential has also introduced a new plan. So it has launched its first new ULIP called ICICI Pru Platinum. So this Pru Platinum, it offers choice to the choose between 2 life cover variants. One is the Growth Plus variant, other one is the Protect Plus variant. So the Growth Plus variant, what it does that it entitles the nominee to receive either the sum assured or the fund value. The fund value will be linked to the market value, so it will vary. So either you can take the sum assured or the fund value, whichever is higher. Next is the Protect Plus variant. It offers nominee both the sum assured and the fund value. So Russia holds a special rupee Vostro account with us. So suppose we are importing oil from Russia. So previously we used to pay in dollars to Russia, but since the US has put sanctions, so we are not able to pay any dollar settlement or ruble settlement with Russia. So what do is instead of paying to Russia in dollar or ruble, we store the amount that we have to pay to Russia in rupee format in the special rupee Vostro account. And in turn, Russia uses this amount that is stored in this Vostro account for investment purposes in India. So this is what a special rupee Vostro account is for. The MD and CEO of Canara HSBC Life Insurance is Anuj Mathur and it is headquartered in Gurugram. And the MD and CEO of ICICI Prudential Life Insurance Company is Anu Bagji and it is headquartered in Mumbai, that's Maharashtra. The next news is about a new innovation in the financial sector. Let us move into it. Now, Setu, a division of the Pines Lab Group, it has launched Sesame, India's first large language model LLM for the banking, financial and insurance sector. So it is developed in collaboration with Sarvam Artificial Intelligence. Now, what is this Pine Lab? The Pine Lab, it is an Indian company that provides point of sale system and payment system. It was founded in 1998. So Setu, it has launched Sesame along with its technology partner called Sarvam Artificial Intelligence. And the Sarvam Artificial Intelligence co-founders are Vivek Raghavan and Pratyush Kumar. It is headquartered in Bengaluru. So what is Sesame? So Sesame, it basically aims to enhance the credit decision making. So before giving loan to any customer, the bankers, they have to properly evaluate the customer CIBIL score, his previous credit history. So this will enhance the credit decision making and also provide hyper personalized financial services. The Sesame utilizes data for credit worthiness assessment, customer profiling, and also enhancing the financial process such as credit underwriting and fraud detection. Next news is that Yes Bank, it has partnered with e-banks to empower the cross-border commerce in India. So India, if you see, India has the second largest online shopping market globally. So around 350 million customers are involved in this online shopping market. But in spite of that, the cross-border payment in digital commerce is only for about 9% of the transaction. So this accounts only for 9% of the transaction. For this purpose, to increase this digital commerce payments, the Yes Bank, it has partnered with e-banks for payment processing in India for the global digital economy. So what is this partnership for? It aims to streamline the cross-border payment processing. It enhances the global commerce opportunities for international merchants and as well as for the Indian customers. So for this purpose, the Yes Bank and the e-banks has partnered. The MD and CEO of Yes Bank is Prashant Kumar. It was established in 2004 and the tagline is Life ko banao rich. Moving to the next news, Mirae Mutual Fund, it has launched Nifty Mid Small Cap 400 Momentum Quality 100 ETF. Now, so this Mirae Asset Mutual Fund, it has launched a Mid Small Cap 400. This is India's first mutual fund scheme with 50 mid cap and 50 small cap stocks. Now, what is this small cap? The small cap, mid cap and large cap, they have been categorized based on the market capitalization. So market capitalization is the total number of shares and the value of the share. That is how much each of the share cost. So price of the share into total number of shares. This, if you multiply, you will get the market capitalization. If this is less than 5,000 crores, then it is considered small cap. If it is between 5,000 and 20,000 crores, it's mid cap. And if it is greater than 20,000 crores, then it is large cap. Now, so how will this mutual fund work? It will invest 95% to 100% in these securities, that is small cap and mid cap, and the remaining 0 to 5% in money market instruments or debt securities or unit of debt or liquid schemes of a mutual fund. Now, the CEO is Swarup Anand Mohanty and the headquarters is in Mumbai. Moving to the next news. India contributes $5 lakh to the UN Trust Fund for Counter-Terrorism. Now, so India's permanent representative to the United Nations ambassador is Ruchira Kamboj. So she is Ruchira Kamboj. She has in representing India, has presented a volunteer financial contribution of $5 lakh to the UN Trust Fund for Counter-Terrorism. So with this, the total contribution to this counter-terrorism by India is 2.55 million. But many other countries have contributed even more than India, and the Qatar tops the UN Trust Fund for Counter-Terrorism. So, United Nations Office of Counter-Terrorism Secretary General is Vladimir Voronko. It was established in 2017. The headquarters is in New York, that is United States. Now, ADB and Citi, they have signed an MRPA to support the SME and the trade through supply chain financing. Now, the Asian Development Bank and the Citigroup Inc., they have signed a master risk participation agreement to enhance access to supply chain. So, in order to improve the SME, small and medium enterprises, in order to improve their sales turnover, this partnership has been done. Now, what is this agreement? In this agreement, the lender sells a portion of a loan to the participant who gains benefit from the lending setup. This allows institution to shift the risk while retaining ties with the commercial entities. So in order to reduce the risk, whatever loan has been given, there's always a risk exposure with that loan. So in order to reduce this risk exposure, this tie-up or this partnership has been done. REC Limited receives NOC from the RBI to establish wholly owned subsidiary in IFSC, that is GIFT City. So the REC, Rural Electronic Corporation, it has received an NOC from the RBI for establishing a wholly owned subsidiary in the IFSC Gujarat. So this subsidiary, it will enhance collaboration with the international investors, offering REC increased access to innovative financing options. So what is REC? It is an Maharatna company under the Ministry of Power. It is registered with RBI as a non-banking finance company and an infrastructure finance company. Thank you for watching the session. I hope you had enjoyed it. We're also available in Telegram under the name AffairsCloud_official. We also have an Instagram handle. Apart from this, you can contact us directly on 9677333862 regarding any courses that we offer or regarding any payment issues. You can contact directly on this number. Thank you.